Alright, welcome back to part 2. In this tutorial we're going to be going over placing units and groups and grouping units together and how to get them to first RB standards for doing mini ops and whatnot. So we're back into where we left off in part 1 with our unit, our single unit, and our respawn west. For the last tutorial, there's no way to test this in single player, the respawn system. The only way to test to make sure it works is to make sure that you go into a multiplayer server and test it out. So you can't actually respawn and whatnot in single player editor mode. You're gonna have to test out your respawn system in single player, or excuse me, multiplayer. Alright, so let's get started. So this is going to be a very simple one. We're not going to be going over too much, just basic unit placing like we did with this guy. So this one we're going to be going over the attributes and stuff that you could set for a single reference. So we're going to go up here to unit selection, just a single guy standing here, and we're going to double left click again. And again, if you get errors like this, it's not very serious at all. Just close that out. So we're going to be keeping it under NATO to keep it vanilla, and what we're going to do is we're just going to have a basic reference still. So going from top to bottom here in this section, special basically means if they're in formation, are they flying, are they in cargo of a vehicle, and then none means like they basically spawn where they stand. So for me, I personally like to set it to none. Usually when they're in formation, they'll end up kind of out of place and out of orientation of where you place them. So always set it to none, and whenever you place more units, so this option will always stay selected, so you're going to have to keep on selecting every unit you place. Moving down, control. So this is one of the more important things when making a multiplayer mission. So the control here, right now, it's always going to be set as non-playable for every unit you place. So if you hit this box and go down, you'll see player and playable. You see that, if you remember, I had this unit over here as player, so if I set him to player and hit OK, it switches. And you see his blue line, just ignore that for now, we'll go over that in a bit. So you can see that he doesn't have the red circle over him anymore. He now does. So let's go and set this guy back to player, and if I set this guy to playable, so this is basically if people can actually play as this character. So when you go into a multiplayer server, you'll notice how you could select units. This is exactly how you make it to where you can only select a certain unit. So if you wonder how people in missions only get to choose certain roles and not AI roles or anybody else like enemy forces, this is the reason why. So if you have it set to non-playable, if you go into a multiplayer server, it's not going to let you play as this character. So you always want to make sure that they're playable. So one player unit and then the rest all playable, depending on who you're making the mission for and how many people. Vehicle locked, I always just leave this default. You don't really want to lock a vehicle, so just leave it as default. Rank comes in as a group. When you're spawning in groups, rank you don't really have to worry about for a single unit, so we'll go over this when we go over the group stuff. Info age, you don't really need this, just leave this unknown. It's really pointless here, depending on the mission that you're making, but always leave that unknown. Info age. Azimuth is basically the bearing of where the unit's facing. You change that at a later time. You could change it in-game as well. Elevation is like where the unit's sitting, so if he's on ground level, which is 0, you could set him to 1. I think it goes by meter, so 1 meter above ground, 10 meters above ground if you want to in a building or start on a ship or something. That takes a little bit more effort on finding the height of the buildings and objects. Alright, so we're going to go over here to the right box now. This is where it gets a little bit more, I guess, complex in a way. So the name you don't really have to worry about unless you're using a certain script. So if a script requires a unit to be named, this is where you would put like unit 1 or something of that sort. This you don't want any spaces, so you don't want that. If you're gonna put a space, make sure you put an underscore, or a dash. So _1 or -1. No spaces in this. You don't want spaces here. Initialization, you don't have to worry about this box unless you're using scripts that are pointed towards a certain unit. So for instance, if like damage, set damage false or whatever, something like that. So yeah, that initialization box, you don't have to worry too much about that again, unless you're using a script. Alright, so description. Description, this is where when you go into like a multiplayer mission and you'll see something like Raider 1 platoon leader. So this is where you want to organize the squads. You don't want to just leave it blank because it'll just show up as like a rifleman or something. So for organization purposes, you always want to put this on what the role is. So fire team, 1-1 alpha or something of that sort. It really helps with organization. So moving down, skill, when you're dealing with playable units, it doesn't really matter. You could just leave it default, which is 50-50. Health and armor, always leave that max. Fuel, just leave it max. Ammunition, max. Probability of presence, you always want to make sure that this is max. You don't want it to be like a little short like that, or a little off, because then it'll make it to where they probably won't be able to play. So make sure it's always 100% probability of presence. Condition of presence is always true. Always leave that true. Never remove that. Placement radius, always leave it 0. If you put it to like 10, within that 10-meter radius of the unit, that's where he'll spawn. So always just leave it like this. So this is basic little configuration setup here for a single unit. Alright, so let's get into creating groups now. So creating groups, we'll just go over here. So I'm going to start with, actually I'm going to go, we'll go more down here so it doesn't group up with these guys, or just move these guys over. Alright, so placing groups, what you want to do is, I'll do this like how first everywhere, how I create my mission. So we're going to place a unit, we're going to make him NATO, and we're going to make him the squad leader. So again, names, leave that. So you see the special is none. Always make sure it's none. Always make sure it's selected. Make sure every unit is selected to none, except for AI units that you want in formation. But for the playable units, make sure they're always set to none, so they don't spawn like over here or anywhere else. So we're gonna go make it playable. Make this unit playable, and then we'll make him. So this is gonna be the platoon leader, so he'll be a lieutenant. So we'll do something like Raider 1 platoon leader, exactly like that. And we're gonna okay, and he did group up with those guys. So if you want to make this faster, what you could do is highlight a single unit. Make sure it's just a single unit. Make sure you don't have any markers in the area, so you don't duplicate markers. So just click on this unit, left click on him, Control C, and then Control V, and then it pastes that unit with all of his attributes. So Raider 1 platoon leader, lieutenant, non-playable. Even if you copy and paste, it'll still always change the control to non-playable, so make sure it's always playable. So now what we're going to do is we're going down to the fire team level. So we're going to go to team leader, and then we're going to make him 1-1 alpha fire team leader. So something like this. So fire team alpha, fire team leader, make sure it's playable. Now this is where you bring down the rank to a sergeant, and special, always none. So we got that set up. And then what you want to do is, if you want to group these units together, I'm going to finish with the fire team, and I'll go over how to group them together, since there's a certain way I like to do it. So when you do it, hit Control C again on that fire team leader or squad leader, and then Control V. And you see it doesn't automatically group them like when I do just place a default unit. So Control C and Control V, copy and pasting, works the best. So now what you want to do is you want to double click the team leader, the new team leader that you selected, and you want to change him to the machine gunner or the automatic rifleman since it goes team leader, automatic rifleman, grenadier, then rifleman. So automatic rifleman, now what you can do is you could just start naming them automatic riflemen. So you don't have to actually put the 1-1 alpha in front of their names anymore. You can, but you don't have to anymore. So you're going to make sure it's playable, and now what you want to do is you want to bring down the rank to either private or corporal. I like to do private. So automatic rifleman, and then playable, and so on. So it's really just the same thing over and over, just changing the units and their names, or their description. So again, copy and paste. Double click on it to edit him. Change him to a grenadier this time. Let's find the grenadier class. The grenadier unit, there he is. And then just change it to grenadier. And then make sure he's also playable. He's already a private, his special set to none. We're good on that. And then again, hit Control C, Control V. Make sure it's make sure it's rifleman now. So just a basic rifleman, or you can make him a rifleman AT. We'll do that for now. So do rifleman AT. Alright, so rifleman AT, and then if you want, you could do rifleman, or you could do rifleman AT. It doesn't matter. So I like to just put rifleman. And then once you're done, always make him playable. Make sure he's private. And special set to none, and then you're done with that. So now we have a fire team, and this is where the ranks come into play. So if we have this guy as the lieutenant, we have this guy as a sergeant, and then the fire team members as privates. So now what you want to do is you want to go to the groups tab here with the 3 standing men, and now what you'll notice, if you click and drag, it will not actually move the unit. Like if we're in single, we can left click and drag this guy anywhere we want. So with this, you have to be careful with who you select and if you want to move it. So now if I do that, left click, move him around, we go to the groups, and if I try doing it left click, you see now that there's a gray line following my cursor. That's basically the group system. So the way I always do the fire teams is I